Hmm.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. Looks like we have a full house today, which is great to see. We're glad to provide this as a service to our customers, people that have interest in the CARES Act in general, and we had a great response on our last round. So we have a very interesting and knowledgeable contact that will be on the call today with us, Sue Malone, and hope that you gather quite a bit of value out of this. So one of the ways to get additional value is participating in the chat and Q&A tools on our webinar, asking any questions that you may have, and we'll try to address those either along the way or in the Q&A session itself, which can be very valuable. This is Christian Bicassa from JobNimbus, and we're ready to go. One quick note, we are recording this, and we'll distribute it to all attendees and registrants, so keep that in mind. Take some notes. Again, ask any questions that you may have, and then we'll go from there. My name's Christian Bicassa. I work in sales operations at JobNimbus. Have quite a bit of experience in sales, marketing, and work with various contractors. And today's guests are our co-founder, Ben Hudson. Ben, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, co-founder of JobNimbus, and feel really strongly that we love having customers using our software, and we love talking about what we can do, but we also see that there's a lot of need in the industry just for some best practices and more information, especially right now with this whole COVID crisis, about how you can help your business survive and hopefully thrive through this period. So we're doing these types of webinars as just a sort of a service to our customers and anybody who's interested, because we just really care about helping everybody succeed and get to where they want to be. And frankly, we've seen a lot of people struggle through this period, and there's some light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of things to be optimistic about, and we're going to share some of those today.
Great, great. And our guest speaker today is Sue Malone. Sue has a plethora of experience with what's going on out there in the CARES Act. Sue, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am Sue Malone. You see the picture, I'm the one in the middle between those two handsome bookends. So it's a pleasure to be here. I have worked with small businesses for over 20 years. I've been a small business owner. I've owned 9 businesses. I work a lot with contractors throughout the United States. So it's just a real pleasure to be here, and I've been very involved in the authoring of the PPP bill, and then of course, adding my input to the one that's sitting over in the House right now. So it's just a true honor to be here to help as many small businesses as possible. That's my goal, is to make you all millionaires.
Love it.
All right, thanks for the intro too. And I can't say enough how much we appreciate you being here. It's great to have somebody with such a personal fingerprint on this whole CARES Act and PPP process. So we can keep going here, Sarah. All right, so today, really we want to dive in first and foremost into a handful of myth busters out there. There's a lot of rumor, myths, et cetera, associated to the CARES Act and PPP, and we're going to allow Ben and Sue to kind of talk through some of those things and get level set for the day.
Great. Sue, do you want to take the first one here about large banks?
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. We have a lot of information that's in the news. 24/7 news cycle is not always our best friend. I know they're trying their very best, but I work on a very practical point. I'm boots on the ground, so to speak. So a lot of people went to large banks, and what was happening with that is the large banks were taking care of their top clients. So what I have seen across the nation is your small community banks are your best bet. They know you, they're part of the community, and they know how important keeping you solvent is to the well-being of the community that they serve. So there's the large bank that you work with, but never forget about the community banks, and that's also credit unions. Credit unions are very involved in this.
I've known quite a few people now who have received PPP funds and several who have not because it ran out before they were able to get access to it in the first round. And the ones that did receive funds, 9 times out of 10, they had applied with a community bank. And the ones that didn't get the money were usually with the bigger banks. So there's definitely some anecdotal evidence I've seen of this.
And I'll second that. That's absolutely true. One community bank along the Eastern Seaboard did 1,600 loans for small businesses in the markets that they serve. So much more than those big banks.
Yeah, and Sue, actually, a question just came in kind of correlated to this, and I think it's one of those myths. Someone asked, hey, what if your bank is a big bank? A lot of the rumors out there were people were told to go to their bank.
That is true. And one of the reasons why they wanted you to go to the bank that you work with is because they already had your client profile up. So it would be easier for them to fund the loans. However, they were overwhelmed with their bigger clients, and I mean, that's who they were taking care of. So what I suggest is look at who your community bank is in your neighborhood or in your community and go open a small little account.
Yep.
And you'd be surprised what they will do for you.
By the way, we were working through Chase. Chase was totally dropping the ball, was behind the curve of almost every other bank and getting things going. But that's who we bank with, our company. And so we went to a couple local banks and they were willing to work with us. They were able to set up an account in less than 24 hours for our company and do the application through that. And we had some that said they couldn't take any more, and others, we just shopped around until we found the right one that was ready to go. It took a little work, but it probably was just a day of effort of calling around, and we had somebody identified that could move faster.
Yeah, that's the case too. You really do have to shop around. It may not very well be the first small bank or local bank that you go to. Some of them aren't taking application anymore, so you will have to shop around.
Right, because their back end isn't set up. It's a very complex back end for the community banks to set up right away too. So have patience with them as they do it. Here's the good news. We've been in it for 10 days, almost 2 weeks now, really 10 days by the time Treasury got everything to the banks. So the banks have finally have their feet on the ground. So when this next round of funding comes out, which will probably be signed by Friday, it looks like, and then back out on the street Monday, the banks will be in a much better position.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So what about this one, Sue, that people were applying to multiple banks at the same time? I mean, we're kind of giving the advice to shop around. Should you have applications going with a bunch of different banks at once?
No, because what's going to happen is that when the bank submits the loan application, it has to go through one portal, and that one portal will give the number that's going to be allocated to the funds, so Treasury can keep track of their funds, so to speak, and it'll be caught there. 2 days ago, I would say if you were as a big bank, also apply with a community bank. But now the banks have gotten, as I said, there's 31 different changes that have come on. So right now I would apply with one bank, but ask them, say, are you actually doing this, or are you going to put me on hold? Because if they're going to put you on hold, go down to the next one.
Yep. So that's what you should be doing, is just when you're shopping around, you're finding out who can move fast for you, who's guaranteeing that they can make it happen. Work with those people. Anybody who says we can't take any more applications, don't bother with them. Anybody who says they're overwhelmed right now, don't bother with them. And if you've already applied at a bigger bank, and like in the case of Chase for us, they send out this email that tells you like where you're at. Oh, your application's been received. Now your application's being processed. Now it's been sent off the SBA and ready to fund, but there's no more money. if you're at the stage 3 that says it's ready to fund, then you're pretty far down the road. I would say no reason to go try to apply somewhere else. What do you think, Sue?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if they say they're ready to fund, that means they've submitted through the government portal.
Yep. So as soon as the new bill gets passed, then that money gets out there. You're really likely to get the next tranche of funds because it's a pretty big number.
Exactly. It's 320 billion.
Yeah. Awesome. Talk to me a little bit about this 31 changes since the original bill. Actually, I think everybody interested if you just tell a little bit, a quick story of how this bill even came to be too, along with this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I happen to be in DC working on a committee that I work on for small businesses. That's what I advocate for, so they're not forgotten out here in the rest of the 50 states. And I noticed that the plane was really light, and I said, something's going on. So I immediately texted Marco Rubio, who's chairman of the Senate Small Business Committee, and said, we're going to have to do something. And I never criticize anybody or say we have to do something if I don't put some information to them. That's just not fair. So I sent them some information on what I think that should be done. And lo and behold, it was done, and it's actually working. However, when we originally wrote the package, it was 360 pages. By the time we got it over to the House, it was 1,404 pages. So during that, we've had 31 different changes. One of the changes, as you see in this highlight, is the 1099 employees. In the original bill, it was included because so many small businesses have 1099s that they use on a consistent basis. It's just not a one-off, it's consistent.
Yeah.
That item changed 4 times. So right now, the 1099s cannot be included with the business that hires the 1099s.
If they, if this new bill passes, I mean, do we have enough information on the language that's coming through the Senate right now to know if 1099s are being addressed there?
I don't think they're going to be addressed any longer. I think they're going to stay where they are now, that 1099s are their own business and they must apply themselves as their own entity.
Okay. So yeah, that's the advice now. When we had our last webinar at the time, it hadn't been changed yet, and 1099s were still something. We even read some of the bill language at the time. But since then, we've had those changes, clarifications. So if you have 1099 people, they're their own business and they should be applying for these funds separately from you. You can't collect the funds for them.
Exactly.
And then
they have a different process on
on
the 1099s have a very different process on how to receive the funds and how to calculate their funds. They have to supply a Schedule C for 2019 and take their net income as their figure and times that by 2.5.
So we are recording this, and if you do have 1099s and you're struggling to be able to pay them, but you can get them to get money for themselves, that could still solve this problem for you. And they could watch this and get the information and go and do that. You can help them with that application process.
Excellent. That's been a prominent question for us even again today. This morning, I'm seeing a handful come in. So.
And also one word of advice on putting together your Schedule C for 2019. To make it easy on you, just take your year-to-date 12/31/2019 profit and loss and flip it over to the Schedule C. Do not include the amount of money that you pay yourselves out of the business, because that is going to be reflected down in the net income. I just don't want you to double count an expense and shortchange yourself.
Okay, and that's the advice specifically for the people who are like sole proprietors or partners or that sort of thing and are paying themselves out of the proceeds of the business. That's what you're talking about by not counting their salaries, right?
Correct. That's single member LLC and 1099s and sole proprietors.
Let's talk a little bit about the new bill, because the money is out already on the first CARES Act. What do we know right now about the new bill? Is more money coming, and when could be a possible timeline for that?
Well, underneath the PPP program, there's $320 billion allocated for it. I'm going to say it'll probably be out by Monday, Tuesday. So get your applications in now for it, so you're in the queue. And then underneath the EDIL, economic disaster loan, which is started as the 10,000, they have another 60 billion coming into that. Now those rules have also changed, because when it first came out, it was going to be $10,000 for each business that applied. Now it's $1,000 per employee up to the $10,000.
Ah, okay, interesting. And that, as I understand, that passed the Senate as of last night. The vote happened and it passed. It's now over in the House. So your thinking is it's going to move through the House through the rest of this week, and then possibly the president signing that on Monday or Tuesday of next week?
Well, yeah, he said he'd sign it this weekend from
Okay.
my phone calls in there, if it passes through the House. And I think there's enough public pressure that they're going to.
Okay. And then once it's signed, how long does it take from the time of signing until they can actually get that money out there and implement and actually fund the loans for people? Is it several days to hand it off from the executive branch to implementation, or does that happen immediately?
Well, they say it happens immediately, but it takes several days, because they've got to get the funds to the banks.
That's right, exactly. So that's why you're thinking probably Monday or Tuesday, maybe Wednesday to be would be a day that you'd probably for sure have money in the accounts, loans to be funded again. Okay, all right. So about a week away right now. That's great news, I think, for a lot of people who saw all that money run out before they could even get to it. So. Okay, we do in this deck want to go over some basics, because there are probably still a lot of questions and some things have changed. So we're going to hit what the PPP, we're using a lot of acronyms right now. We're going to get into the details on what those are and share just some details about what the act is and what the new bill has included. Basically, as I understand it, Sue, the new bill is mostly focused on just getting more money under the same types of constraints as the CARES Act. It's not creating a whole new loan program, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. So I think everybody's probably pretty much aware at this point that the CARES Act has already been signed, and there's a lot of media attention around it. Its big focus was to help small businesses. One question I had for you is that it seemed like I read a lot of articles the last few days that a lot of big businesses got a lot of funding, but a lot of small businesses didn't. Is that true, or is that just a media hype thing? What really happened there? Do we have any data yet on who got funded and how many were small and how many were large?
No, we don't have the true data yet. Yes, there were some that large that were funded, and if you'll notice, that was in the restaurant industry. Because part of the issue with the bill, there's always flaws in it, because you never know what your unintended consequences are going to be. The reason why the restaurant industry received money, because of the deadline on how fast you have to spend the money. Because you had 8 weeks you had to spend the money to get the forgiveness, and there isn't any way that restaurants can be back up and running in the 8 weeks. So that is why you're going to see a lot of your restaurant chains seeing it. But a lot of those are kind of franchises too. So they are individual owners if you break it down.
Ah, gotcha. And that's how they work the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but yes, there are some people that should not have received it. And I know one bank that did it, and I'm fuming.
Okay, is it gonna get better in this next one, or are we gonna be left holding the bag again with a bunch of other big companies that take the money before anybody else can get it? Is there anything new provisions in this law that's gonna fix that?
The pressure is on. The
Okay.
pressure is on to be
Yeah.
much more accountable. And plus the other item you have to remember is the fraud. We have people from outside the United States that were trying to tap into this. So all kinds of different parameters were put up during this. It just came out way too fast.
Yeah. It was speed over quality of delivery, and there's obviously a big crisis right now, so I can understand that. At the same time, I think we've learned a lot, and so hopefully we're not going to make those same mistakes again this time around. So there's really two parts to the CARES Act. There's a lot more to it, but the two big ones that everybody's going to hear about are the PPP and the IEEDL. Sue, would you mind just kind of giving us a rundown of what both are and what the differences are, why you might choose one over the other?
Or choose both.
Or choose both, that's right.
Yeah, because the economic injury disaster loan was the one that first came out with the $10,000 as a grant. And that was the one that was changed to $1,000 per employee. So up to $10,000 on it is going to be a grant for you. Now, if you need, if you don't have a payroll and you have had you can prove economic disaster, which a lot of people have because they're sole proprietors or single member LLCs, and they've lost their customers, they were ready to buy a piece of equipment to enhance it, and all of a sudden 2019 was going great, 2020 was even on track to outperform 2019, and then the door slammed. However, you have backup documentation to show that you were moving ahead, and you just didn't have any employees, so you can't claim the PPP and really have any money out of it. On the EIDL, you apply online, and then if you want additional money, $25,000 and less, there is no collateral. There are personal guarantees, and it's an interest rate of 3.9 for 25 years. But it covers a lot more than the PPP program does. And I'm willing to, go granular on anyone who has specific needs after this. Sarah has all my contact information. And on the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, that was mainly for payroll. And that was based on 2019. You can get both. However, not both parties are going to be forgiven. So you can roll the $10,000 into the PPP program if you so select to do that.
Ah, okay.
I know it's so confusing.
Well, no, that's great. So really, the thing is that everybody's talking about the PPP right now because of that loan forgiveness aspect. But with a 25-year loan at a crazy, crazy low interest rate, I think both options are really attractive for a company who needs money right now to get through this period.
Exactly, and it's not as confined on what you can spend it on
That's
as
right.
the PPP program.
Yep.
And you don't have that confined time frame. I mean, you have to spend that PPP money rather quickly.
One question that came up, is the money that ran out just money that was allocated for PPP, or was that also the money for the EIDL that ran out as well?
Both. They ran out of both, but they've both been funded. $60 billion for the EIDL and $320 billion for the PPP.
Okay, so if you're trying to decide on which one to use, I wouldn't just stay with the media line of, oh, I've got to do the PPP because of the loan forgiveness. I would seriously consider trying to apply for the EIDL and see if you can get money either way, especially if you need it, because the EIDL is much less restrictive on what you can use that money to do to build your business through this period.
Real quick too, Sue, can you touch on the topic of how to follow up on either or of these loans in understanding where you're at? A lot of people have applied, they either did or did not get a loan number. They're not sure if they should reapply if they don't have a loan number, or how did they get a status update?
That's the $1 million question. For the EIDL, when you applied online, you received a number right away. That is your number that the funds have been allocated for you. Now they're going to go back in and check everything you did. So that is all you're going to hear from the SBA until you're funded. They don't have the manpower to do any follow-up. If you do not have that number that when you apply, as soon as they pull up, watch to see when they put up the website, www.sba.gov/disaster. As soon as they open that up again, go in there and apply. It's very easy. It takes you 10 minutes at the most. Then, if you're interested in the PPP program, and if you apply to the bank and you haven't heard, most people haven't because they've been overwhelmed on the back end of it. You can call your bank. They're not going to answer, to be truthful with you. They just don't have the manpower. You're going to have to wait until you get something back from the bank. But if it's been a long time and you haven't even gotten an email yet, you should have gotten an email now. I would go ahead and reapply.
Okay. Another subject that's come up a couple times is just maybe quickly address is it seems like people are having success applying through PayPal. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, PayPal became, they gave them emergency designated lender. They were one of 5 that received it. If you have a PayPal account, you'll make it through. If you don't, it's going to be tough.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. That's good to know. Nice tip. All right. Let's keep going, Sarah. So let's get in a little bit of details on the PPP. And I know there's been a bunch of questions about Schedule C and how to account for different things. So maybe we can get into some details, or at least some guidelines here on this, Sue.
Sure. Okay. On the PPP program, 75% of the funds have to go to payroll if you're going to get the forgiveness. My recommendation is to, if you get the PPP money, put it in a separate account, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then run your payroll out of there. You can use 25% of it for your utilities, your rent, any obligations that you were already committed to prior to February 15th, and it fluctuates. It's now March 1st, but anyway, if you have a strong argument, you can keep it on February 15th. So if you have any of those obligations that you meet, you cannot use it to pay interest on any loans or any of those items. Now, what is not forgiven is going to be at a 1% interest rate, which is the Fed window rate, which is unheard of. That's what Chase gets as their cost of funds.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amortized over 2 years. There's going to be no payments for 6 months, and there's no collateral or personal guarantees. It's unbelievable. Never seen anything like this in our lifetime.
Yeah, so that's why there's probably been so much interest in this, is because it is a sweet setup, sweet deal. There's been some questions about what happens if you're like, how many weeks do you have to go without reducing pay staff? Is it 8 weeks from the time that you receive the money, or is that 8 weeks from when you apply from the loan?
It's from when you receive the money.
Okay. And then you're going to put it in a separate account. You're going to pay your payroll out of it. You may use 25% of it for some other things that are related to the rent or utilities, that sort of thing. And then how do you know that you're going to get it forgiven? Do you just talk to your bank and they verify?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's
so
why
you'll
you
have to make
keep
sure that
really
you're keeping
good
good records. Otherwise, you're going to be on the hook for this money. Now, it's a great interest rate, but still, that's something to consider.
And Sue,
Yeah.
what about bringing on new employees, or a number of people seem to be having problem where they get funded, they go back to employees to try and bring them back, and they're either unwilling to come back or there's some friction there. How do they handle that?
That's a
certified letter?
Unbelievably good question. Yes, because they're making too much money on unemployment, so they don't want to come back. It's been a real issue, real issue. So what I would do, because you have to document your file that you tried to bring them back, send them an email, so you have a paper trail, and offer them the job at the same rate that you were paying them then, and then have them send it back to you that's no. So you tried, they said no. So that's out of your hands because you cannot force anyone to work for you.
And so they don't need to send certified letters or anything like that, or is that recommended as well?
It's recommended as well, but the problem is most of them won't sign the letter and send it back.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm hearing just the general spirit of this is just do a really good job of documenting, be above board. If there's ever any gray area, go totally toward the light here. Make sure you're keeping everything on the up and up and really well documented, and you have the best chance of getting forgiven, even if some stuff is not being followed correctly.
Right. And then if they don't have a return employee, is that open the gates for them to go and hire someone new?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember, the big picture is it's all about jobs. It's all about bringing people back to work. So as long as you can document your files on that, that's the ultimate goal.
A lot of our customers right now are, a lot of people just in the contracting industry in certain areas are very light on work. And so if you're bringing people back that you laid off because you just didn't have work for them, what do you do when you don't have any work for them, but you've got to pay them for this PPP loan? Is that just the reality of the situation, or do you have some suggestions there?
I know. It's such a gray area, and it's so tough for small businesses because they need to do the work. There isn't any work out there because no one will let you in your house or in the building or anything. And you have to bring the people back in order to qualify for the forgiveness on the PPP. Document the file of what it's like in your community, how there isn't any work, or you're on a mandatory shutdown. You want to bring people back, but you can't get into their house, or you cannot get in to the place that you're doing the work because of the government mandatory shutdown, whether it's city, county, state, federal, whatever. Download it so you've got it in your file to show that it was out of your hands. There was nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, okay, that's great. The other thing I would just suggest, I've seen a lot of companies who have called us, and we've had a lot of people signing up lately saying, hey, we're actually a little bit light right now. I've got some people just sitting around that can't normally do stuff. This is a great time for us to get your software implemented, to get everybody trained, to get really set up for the busy season. So not to go off on a pitch about JobNimbus, but I have seen just getting your processes under control and working on your business while you have that breathing room. Huge benefit right now. So you could look at this as maybe a positive instead of a negative in that way.
Yeah. Another element too has kind of come up in some of these questions is, look, if you haven't laid anybody off, that doesn't hold you back from applying. You should still apply and try and get the funding in place because you just don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, if you have not applied or haven't laid people off, still take advantage of the funds that are potentially available here.
Okay, let's keep going. That's great. Good conversation here. All right, let's talk about the EIDL then. Sue, do you want to kind of give us a rundown on this?
Sure. It as I said, it can be used for other things besides payroll and rent. So if you have other items that were on your docket that you had planned to do in 2020 and you'd already were moving forward until the door slammed. So it can cover many more items besides payroll. So it can cover the leasing of you if you've leased equipment or leasing vehicles that are in the company's name. It can be used for all of those normal business expenses that you don't have the revenue to cover. Now, the interest rate's going to be at 3.75. It's up to $2 million. That's the $10,000 is the one that we've spoken about several times, and that's easy to do. And the first payment is deferred for 12 months. So that's very good too. So that gives you enough time to ramp up. So let's say you have to do marketing, because once this is over, everyone's been caged. Everyone's going to just run out of their dwellings and say, okay, we're ready to go. So I want you to be prepared on the marketing, have everything in order. This is a good time to do all of that, to get yourself rolling and back on board in 2020. Another item that I want to bring up, that's kind of a hidden item. When you're applying for these loans, one of the things the bank officers and underwriters are going to look at, is this business going to be viable after we're through the pandemic? So it's really good, in my opinion, to do a narrative on your business. And this is for both loans. You do a narrative of how long you've been in business, your year-over-year earnings, where you were at the end of 2019, what you forecasted for 2020, and then all of a sudden the door slammed on you very quickly. No one had any warning on this. Then the next paragraph, I want you to talk about what you plan on doing once the pandemic is over and you can get back to work. And that is key for both of these loans for approval, because they're weeding loans out, which they won't tell you, if the business looked weak going into the pandemic.
Ah, okay. So what happens if let's say I'm a contractor, I've got 4 employees, I've already applied for the PPP and didn't get the money, but my application's somewhere in process with my bank. I haven't done the EIDL yet. If I just went and applied for the EIDL and I have 4 employees, I would get $4,000 in an advance, right? Because it's up to $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. That
Correct.
I do not have to pay back. That $4,000 would just be free money for me. And then whether or not I get the loan or not, I still don't have to pay that money back. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a benefit to just applying for the EIDL right now, just to get some extra money that's not even on any interest rate. And then, of course, if you do get the EIDL, then you have a lot more flexibility to use that money for other things. What determines the up to 2 million cap? Is that really just about the story that you tell about why you need it?
That's the story the story you tell, why you need it, how you're going to use it, and how it's going to benefit your business. Now, they don't look at your future forecasting. What they look at is your past forecasting on the determining how much money they're going to loan to you. So put out what your revenues were and what your expenses have been in 18 and 19. And this is what what we anticipate them to be for 2019. They're going to base the number of 2020, excuse me. They're going to base the numbers on 18 and 19 to move forward to 2020, and that's what they're going to fund you on.
That's great. Are there any tips on things that resonate more than others? Like, if I'm understanding you, it sounds like the spirit of this is really just to recover the business from whatever it lost during this pandemic period, right? So really the story should be around this is where we thought we would be. This is how far off we are. Look at the historical. That's why we need this money to cover the difference. Is that kind of what you're...
Exactly.
Okay. All right, let's keep moving on the slides here. Okay, this is talking more about the eligibility of the PPP. Has there anything changed between the CARES Act and this new bill in terms of eligibility?
The only thing that is if you have more than 500 employees, such as staffing companies, because they have temporary people on their payroll, you can go in and look at the NAICS codes and do it by revenue. I don't know if there's anybody on this call that has more than 500 employees or not. But that's the only thing that is really changed.
In our segment, it would be rare. I think pretty much everybody on this call today is going to qualify under that, be under 500 employees.
Okay, that's the only change.
There was a question, I think we mentioned it earlier, but you can apply for both the PPP and the EIDL, and you can get money from both. That's totally legal and fine to do, correct?
Correct. In fact, when this all came out, the first thing I told everybody, go get that EIDL, go apply right away and go get it. And then then do the PPP. So you at least know you're going to have something. Now, another thing that had come up when it first came out in March is a lot of people applied the first 5 days. there was a huge breach. So they took down the entire website, rebuilt it over the weekend. So anyone that had applied during, I think it was March 22nd through March 25th, had to go back in and reapply. So if anyone on this call did that and they did not receive an email to go back in and reapply for the EIDL, please go back and reapply because they lost all that data.
Oh man, what a mess. Jeez.
Oh, unbelievable.
Okay. What about, I saw the EIDL. We didn't apply for that one, our company ourselves yet, but the application had some kind of confusing things on it. Or do you have any tips around how to navigate that application? Should you be working with your bookkeeper, accountant on it? Would your bank be able to assist you in that? What do you think?
Yes, on the one when you go online, that's pretty easy. There's 3 pages on 2 pages, maybe 3 at the most. That's pretty easy to navigate. Where it really gets confusing is when you do the full application where you need more than the $10,000. Yes, work with your bookkeeper, your accountant can help you because you have to make sure you gather everything and it all cross-checks and ties over. Yeah, there's a lot of people that can help you with that.
Okay.
And another thing that has come up, I don't know if you have any businesses within your group that were startup businesses in 2019 and they didn't earn any money yet. So they don't have anything to,
we
to
do
show
have
for it.
several of those. Yes. Yep.
So in 2020, things were humming along. In fact, I've got a couple businesses right now that I'm working on their package for them is they had orders all ready to go, but they can't get them manufactured because no one can come to work. So that is a huge revenue loss. So that's what we're using the EIDL loan for.
Okay. So we got another question here on a person was confused between the difference between the short application that gets you the $10,000 on the EIDL and the full application. If they've filled out the short, how do they get access to the full? Is that something that where the SBA contacts them, or what's the next step there? How do you get to that?
What the next step is, there's additional forms you need to fill out. You can usually download them on the SBA website. They should put them back up. If not, be more than happy to send them to you so you can distribute them to your group. And if you've applied for the $10,000 already, use that as part of the cover sheet and then have your narrative and then add the rest of the documents that you're going to need.
Okay. So that's probably something, Sarah, that we could coordinate with Sue to get the right links for everybody on the call here. So we'll work on that.
And just to clarify there too, Sue, the EIDL, you apply through the SBA, not your local bank. The PPP, you apply through your local bank.
Correct. Yeah, the EIDL is disaster relief, part of the FEMA that goes in after tornadoes and hurricanes and all of that. So yeah, that's direct to the federal government.
A number of people seem to have questions around the application process. You know, when they go in to answer the questions, there seems to be a lot of confusion on what exactly the question is asking. Are there resources out there to help them with that? Where should they go for a resource there?
It's all over the map.
Yeah, okay.
There isn't one central spot, and everyone has a different interpretation. I mean, I can't believe how many different interpretations I've seen on benefits. Yeah, I wish there was. I'll be more than happy to share the bill with you, 864 pages.
Well, sometimes understanding that there is no clarity is clarity, and I think that's the sense here, right? This is a working process. Some of this is just not going to be very clear, and you're going to have to, wade and your way through it.
I mean,
exactly.
I'll just say,
and all the lenders are reading it differently too. So it's not standardized. That's the other issue.
Yeah. Our customers really want to do the right thing. They want to fill this out the correct way. I mean, obviously they want to protect their business because there's risk in taking money if you're taking it under a premise that you think is one way, but then the government changes their mind later. So there's risk there. So that's, I think, where a lot of this is coming from, is like, I got to make sure I fill out this right, so that I'm not that they're lying, but that I'm not saying something wrong because I didn't know I was saying something wrong, or I didn't add up something wrong or take the wrong amount. And that could bite us later as a company. But I really need this money. And the answer is, unfortunately, there's not a lot of clarity. So my hope is that there's going to be a lot of leeway because there wasn't clarity provided. Is that kind of how you're feeling about it, Sue?
Absolutely. And then also document your files and say, this is how I understood it, and this is why I did it this way. There was another company, he read it very differently than what the law was. And so we documented the file, and they signed off on it.
That's great. Okay. So I think that's probably the answer, is just make sure you're documenting everything. Do your best, talk to your bookkeeper. If something's confusing, do your best, and then document how you thought through it and why. And that gives you the best risk protection. Okay. Is there anything else to talk about this eligibility here? I think we hit most of these things. Yeah, let's keep moving just because of time right now. We only got 15 more minutes here, and I think there were some other questions we want to get to. So we talked about whether or not you could apply for both. And now this link that we have in here is this is for the EIDL application, just for the starting application. It's not the full application, I think. So we'll add in some more details there for everybody after this. Let's keep moving here. Okay, so this is really just getting into the details of how do we apply. We've talked about having to go to the SBA for the EIDL. I guess one difference is that I know I've talked to some contractors who either got hit hard during 2008 and had some issues, either with financial issues, bankruptcies, whatever, that might put their credit in a really bad place, or may have had some issues with felonies or something. What are the stipulations with the SBA loan? There's a lot more structure around what you have to be. If you took a hit in 2008, does that mean you shouldn't even bother to apply for the EIDL, or what are the differences there?
Well, technically, they're not supposed to be looking at credit, but I'm going to just tell you they are.
Yeah, I figured.
So yeah, they are. I mean, it says not to, but it is. They are, and I'm just going to tell you the truth because that's who I am, and I want everybody to know that. However, a lot of people took a hit in 2008, and the banks did too. That's why they were so, especially Chase. That's why they were so reluctant on doing this PPP program, because they still had a bad taste in their mouth on the TARP bills that came out in 2008.
Oh, true.
Yeah, that's been the bit. Yeah, that's why Wells, Bank of America, Chase, they all said, we got burned badly. So we're going to wait and see. So that's where they were coming from, why it took them so long and why they're reluctant. They are going to look at your credit. If you've had a bankruptcy, just explain why you had it and how successful you have been since bankruptcy. Because what the underwriter wants to see that you learned your lesson, because there's extenuating circumstances for everything. Everybody has an issue. Just be honest, tell them what happened and how you've made yourself whole and you're carrying on. Regarding the felonies, that's a statutory, that comes from Congress. It's got to be remote in time, one-time occurrence. So you can't have multiple felonies, but you can get a waiver.
Okay. Well, that's great. Is there anything else to say, I guess, about the PPP application process? Just work with your local bank is probably the answer there, right?
Correct. Work with your local bank. What they're looking for is, once again, I keep nagging, sounds like a backup documentation. That if you have employees, they want to see your 2019 payroll. They also want to see what your average payroll is. They want to see your 940s, your 941s for all 4 quarters, your 2018 tax return, your 2019 year-to-date financials, A lot of lenders now are requiring a copy of your driver's license to make sure you are who you are. And ones that do not have a banking relationship with you are obviously going to want to see a voided check. Make sure that voided check is in the exact same name that's on the application that you're applying for.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. And this slide here is just talking to some of the things you'll need to have to apply to the PPP. Again, these are all on the form and things that your banker will require of you. One of the things that's annoying about the PPP, we can't even show you the application because every local bank made like their own version of it. And I've seen all kinds of things from it, but typically these are the types of things that you're going to be asked. There may be some other questions. Why did the government roll it out with having a unique bank, letting every bank determine how they wanted to implement it themselves? Is there a reason for that, Sue? Is it just speed that happened?
Speed.
Yeah. Okay.
Speed.
So that's partially why so many people are going to be frustrated over this, is that there's no definitive clarity that says, if you go to this bank, it's going to look the same as this bank. It's going to be different. That's why it really starts with you talking to your bank representative. And the other thing is that the reason that the advice was giving early on was to work with your current banker. Well, one, you don't have to spend the time of setting up an account, but two, then the banks have to decide on who they even want to work with through the PPP. So already having an existing relationship with a bank gives you a higher chance of being worked with than somebody who's just coming off the street. That's a little bit changed now, I think, that they've funded the first round. Do you think that it's a little more loose where you can kind of go to somebody, just get an account set up and work with them, even if they're a local credit union or something, Sue?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Great. So there
and
was
people
some
have
questions.
calmed down.
Oh, yeah, well, that's true too. Yes. There were some questions early on about whether or not they should just stick with their current bank or look for a local credit union or something. And so I think we talked about earlier that we recommend shopping around, and it's a lot more likely that you'll get it done now than it was on the first round. Okay, Sarah, do you want to move to the next slide here? Let's breeze past this. Let's get towards the end of the deck because we're going to make this available to all the attendees. Do we want to talk about, a lot of people have been asking for help. What's the story on the Small Business Administration?
Well, they have to do it all online because you can't go in and see anybody. So their technical assistance providers such as SCORE and SBDCs and Women Business Centers and VBOX all have to do it online and make an appointment because everyone's working from their home. It's still there, but it's hard to get in.
Yeah. Okay. So not a ton of resources there, but definitely that link could get you some online resources. We do have a poll popping up here too. So if everybody wants to participate in that, we'll give you some details on what everybody voted on. This is more this poll, by the way, is asking you more thinking about, hey, we're starting to see some more optimism in the economy and the market from the president about what the future might look like. And so if you're going to get back to work, or at least try to figure out a way to get back to work in certain states, what's the first thing you're going to do there? So we've only got a couple more minutes. I know we got a bunch of questions. Christian, have you, could you give us a few that Sue could answer that are kind of a amalgamation maybe of I know there's more questions than we're going to get to, but what are some themes that we should hit here to try to get the most value for the attendees?
Yeah, I think real quick would be the EIDL status link and SBA status link. People are trying to figure out how to get status updates, if there are any available. If you could just touch on that one again, Sue, that'd be of value.
Sure. The only status updates you're going to see is when you apply for the EIDL, that they give you your number, your account number, so to speak. And then the next thing you're going to see is the money dropped into your bank account. just while I've been on the phone, I just heard from 6 or 7 of my clients and said the money's in the account, and they hadn't heard a word from SBA prior to that.
Oh,
they just don't have
wow.
the manpower to do it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So check your
Okay.
account.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, check your account. And you'll be surprised one morning. Then on the PPP program, it's your lender. And here's what generally is happening. The lender will approve you, like that, sends it to SBA for a loan number, then we'll send you the electronic documents to sign. Then you will be funded. That's generally how it's going, is what I've seen.
Okay.
Okay,
And
but there's
Sue,
very
Sue,
little communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sue, earlier you mentioned when we spoke about PayPal that there were a few other providers out there that got granted some additional access, et cetera, to funds. Do you know that list? Can you share that list of maybe potential other areas or alternative areas to go through the application process?
Sure. One of the places, Square is another one, but I'm told when I talked to them yesterday, they were maxed out. Once again, your best bet is to go to one of your community banks because they're going to get money from Treasury to do this, and they're nimble and quick. Just go open an account with them, put $100 and open a new business account. And ask, and before you do it, make sure that they're doing the PPP program. But absolutely, that is going to be your best bet because the other ones that were all allocated, were brought on to do it, are all maxed out right now. I'll be more than happy to share the list with Sarah and she can get it out to everybody.
Okay, great.
That'd be great.
A number of people have asked, like, hey, I applied somewhere, I haven't heard anything. Should I apply somewhere else as well? Maybe they started at a big bank and moved on. What are your thoughts there?
If they applied at a big bank, I would. Because big banks are looking at the bigger applications.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if
The
you
bigger
already
dollar
applied
amount.
and you have heard back from your big bank, and like we said, you're further along in the process, you're probably going to keep your place in line and you're probably okay. But if you haven't heard anything back from a big bank, I would say abandon that and go somewhere local right away.
Mm-hmm.
What about, maybe you can touch on the subject. There have been a couple and there's a lot of details oriented to them, but perhaps you can, kind of brief over this and give some guidance. A number of people have asked about how they handle reductions in pay or increases in pay during this period and how they can use the funds correlated to that.
Well, I hear this a lot, and what I really hear is 2019 was such a good year that they started out 2020 by giving their employees pay raises. However, they could not include it in the number in 2019. So I suggested, why not give it a shot and say, okay, in 2020, this is what we increased the payroll by, and include that in your payroll numbers. And then once again, we're back to documenting the file. This is why this number is this amount, is because I increased the payroll in 2020. So document it that way. Regarding paying more when they come back, remember, you've got the PPP money. You can use it for payroll any way you want. So if you want to give someone a higher wage, absolutely you can do it because you've got the money to do it. If you want to reduce theirs, that's going to be where you're going to hit some really muddy water. That I don't know. You won't be able to get all of it forgiven if you do that, in my opinion, as of right now. It could change. So as of right now, I date stamp everything. You won't get all of it forgiven.
Okay.
So we're at the top of the hour here. We probably need to wrap it up, but I know there's a bunch of questions we didn't get to. Sue, I just want to personally thank you, one, for being on this, really helpful. And two, I'm just really thankful for all you're doing for small businesses in America. I really appreciate the service that you're offering. It's very helpful.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, I've funded a lot of contractors, work with a lot of contractors. So I totally understand what the contractors and small businesses go through. In fact, that's why I developed a whole nother business just for contractors. So it's what it's all about. We got to keep building America.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very bullish on the future. I think, you know, this will pass like everything else. We're Americans. We figure out problems. We don't just stand by and let things happen to us. We're doers. So we're going to get out of this. We're going to figure out a way out. And I think the future's bright. And I really encourage everybody to try to take advantage of these programs because that's what they're for. They're really for the small businesses like us, and try to take things to the next level this year. So thanks everybody for being here. Christian, do you want to just kind of wrap things up? I guess the slides will be out next, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest things to remember at this standpoint are Sue is a resource. This is her contact information. She's available for you and has offered that. Take advantage of all the resources that you do have available. We will be sending out a recording of the call, a copy of the deck as well with live links in it. And we'll be updating links best we can prior to sending that out. As I had mentioned in the chat, you know, a lot of these processes, links, et cetera, are changing on a minute by minute basis. So, you know, leverage what you can and get the best use out of it. And we'll probably have some more content coming out to help you guys as well. So thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully we got your questions answered. We can't answer them all, but have a great day and best of luck in the process for you. And that concludes our call. Thank you.